What happens when two of entertainment's sharpest minds clash on live television? When friendly banter turns into something far more intense, and a legendary actor refuses to play by the usual talk show rules. Tonight, we're breaking down one of the most explosive late-night television moments ever captured. A confrontation that left the audience silent, the crew scrambling, and Stephen Colbert himself at a complete loss for words. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on in this incredible showdown. The Late Show was supposed to be just another Tuesday night. Danny DeVito was scheduled to promote his latest project, a documentary series he'd been working on for 3 years about corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. Standard stuff, right? A few jokes, some stories from the set of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, maybe a funny anecdote about his decades in Hollywood. That's how these things usually go. But from the moment DeVito walked onto that stage, something felt different. The audience gave him the usual standing ovation. Colbert greeted him with his trademark enthusiasm. But there was an edge to DeVito's demeanor that the seasoned late-night viewers might have picked up on immediately. He sat down in the guest chair with a certain heaviness, his jaw set in a way that suggested this wasn't going to be your typical lighthearted celebrity appearance. Colbert started with the soft. He asked about the documentary, congratulated DeVito on his long career, made a joke about his height that DeVito had probably heard 1,000 times before. Danny smiled, but it was tight, controlled. He gave short answers where normally he'd launch into elaborate stories. One-word responses where you'd expect his usual animated charm. Then Colbert made his mistake. He transitioned into what he thought was a playful bit, a pre-planned segment his writers had prepared. He pulled out a stack of cards and said he wanted to play a game called Fact or Fiction, where he'd read statements about DeVito's life and Danny would confirm or deny them. Harmless entertainment, the kind of filler that keeps these shows moving. The first few cards went fine. Did you really audition for the role of Wolverine? No, that's ridiculous. Did you turn down a role in The Godfather Part 2? Fiction. I wasn't even on anyone's radar back then. Is it true you own a vineyard in Italy? Fact. And it makes terrible wine, but I love it anyway. Then Colbert read the next card, and you could see his face change as he realized what his writers had put in front of him. His smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but he was committed. He read it anyway. Is it true that you refused to visit your mother in the hospital during her final days because you were filming a movie? The studio went dead quiet. Not the quiet of anticipation, but the quiet of collective discomfort. Like everyone in the room had just witnessed something they shouldn't have. DeVito's expression didn't change immediately. He sat there, completely still, staring at Colbert with an intensity that made the host shift in his seat. Finally, Danny spoke. His voice was low, measured, dangerous. Where did you get that? Colbert tried to laugh it off, doing what talk show hosts do when things get awkward. He gestured to his cards, attempted a joke about his research team, but DeVito cut him off. No, Stephen, I'm asking you a direct question. Where did you get that information? The host fumbled through an explanation about how they pull from various sources. Biographical information that's publicly available, nothing meant to offend. But DeVito wasn't buying it. He leaned forward in his chair, his hands gripping the armrests. That's not publicly available, he said. That's from a hit piece some tabloid ran 15 years ago, and it was a complete lie. My mother died while I was holding her hand. I was there every single day for 2 months while she fought cancer. Every single day, Stephen. And you just read that garbage to me on national television like it's a fun little game. Colbert's face went red. You could see him trying to navigate the situation, apologizing, explaining that he didn't write the cards, that he had no idea. But DeVito was just getting started. You didn't write the cards, Danny repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You just read whatever your writers put in front of you without thinking about whether it's true. That's real professional, Stephen. Real thoughtful. The host tried to move on to get the interview back on track. He suggested they take a commercial break, but DeVito shook his head. No, we're not taking a break. You wanted to play this game? Let's finish it. Read the rest of those cards. Go ahead. Colbert set the cards down on his desk, his hands visibly shaking. Danny, I'm truly sorry. That was completely inappropriate, and I take full responsibility. You take full responsibility, DeVito said, his tone mocking now. That's easy to say, isn't it? But you know what you don't take responsibility for? Actually vetting your material. Actually thinking about the human being sitting across from you before you ambush them with personal tragedy for a cheap laugh. It wasn't meant to be an ambush, Colbert protested, and this is where the argument really started to escalate. I had no intention of hurting you. We make mistakes sometimes on live television. Mistakes, Danny said, standing up now. The audience gasped audibly. This is the part where someone usually walks off, where the interview ends, and everyone pretends nothing happened. But DeVito didn't walk away. He stood there, pointing at Colbert. You know what's interesting, Stephen? You've built your entire career on calling out people for being dishonest, for spreading misinformation, for not doing their homework. You made yourself the moral authority, the guy who holds everyone else accountable. But when it comes to your own show, your own research, suddenly it's just an innocent mistake. Colbert stood up to, defensive now. That's not fair, and you know it. We do our best every single night to get things right. We're human beings. We make errors. Oh, you're human beings, DeVito shot back. That's your defense. You think my mother wasn't a human being? You think her memory doesn't matter because you're just trying to entertain people. The studio audience didn't know how to react. Some people were silent. Others whispered to each other. A few looked like they wanted to leave. This had gone so far beyond normal television territory that nobody knew the protocol anymore. Colbert's tone shifted then, becoming sharper. I apologized, Danny, multiple times. I don't know what else you want from me. Should I get down on my knees? Should I cancel the show? What would make this right in your eyes? And there it was, the moment when Colbert's frustration overtook his professionalism. DeVito saw it immediately and seized on it. What would make it right, he said slowly, is if you actually meant your apology, instead of just trying to move past this awkward moment so you can get to your next segment. What would make it right is if you took some actual accountability, instead of hiding behind your writers and your producers and your research team. You're the host, Stephen. Your name is on the show. Everything that happens here is your responsibility, whether you wrote it or not. The camera cut to the audience, and you could see people nodding. Some of them were agreeing with DeVito, even as uncomfortable as the whole situation had become, because he had a point, and everyone watching knew it. Colbert ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of pure exasperation. What do you want me to do right now, Danny? Seriously, tell me. Because I feel like no matter what I say, you're determined to make me the villain here. I don't have to make you anything, DeVito replied. You did this to yourself. All I wanted was to come on your show, talk about a project I cared deeply about, a documentary that exposes real corruption, real harm being done to real people. Instead, you turned it into this circus where you get to dredge up the worst moment of my life for entertainment value. That was never the intention, Colbert said, his voice rising now. And if you can't accept a sincere apology, then maybe the problem isn't just with me. The audience reacted audibly to that, a mix of gasps and scattered applause. Things were spiraling completely out of control. DeVito took a step closer to Colbert's desk, and for a moment, it looked like this might actually become physical. You know what the real problem is here, Stephen? DeVito's voice had dropped to a dangerous calm, the kind that's somehow more threatening than shouting. The problem is that you've insulated yourself so completely in this bubble of self-righteousness that you can't even see. When you're doing exactly what you accuse everyone else of doing, you stand up here every night throwing stones, but your own house is made of glass. Colbert's jaw tightened. Now you're attacking my character, my integrity, because I read a card that my team prepared. You're going to stand there and act like I'm some kind of fraud? I'm saying that maybe you should practice what you preach, DeVito fired back. You want to know why I'm so angry? It's not just about my mother, Stephen. It's about the fact that you have millions of people watching this show every night, trusting you to tell them the truth. And you can't even be bothered to verify a basic fact about a guest before you weaponize their personal pain for ratings. For ratings, Colbert repeated incredulously. You think I did this for ratings? Danny, I have consistently been #1 in late night for years. I don't need to ambush my guests for ratings. That's absurd. Then why do it at all? DeVito challenged. If you don't need the ratings, if you're so successful and so ethical, why include something like that in your show? What purpose does it serve except to create a moment, to get a reaction, to give people something to talk about tomorrow? The bandleader, John Batiste, was visible in the corner of the frame, looking deeply uncomfortable. The cameras kept cutting back to the audience, where people were now fully engaged in this debate, some clearly siding with DeVito, others with Colbert. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was real conflict playing out in real time. Colbert spread his hands in a gesture of frustration. "You're putting words in my mouth now? You're assigning motives to me that don't exist." "I made a mistake, Danny, a genuine mistake. But you're so committed to this narrative you've created where I'm the bad guy that you won't even consider that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't malicious." "It doesn't matter if it was malicious," DeVito said sharply. "That's what you're not understanding. Intent isn't magic. Stephen, it doesn't erase harm. You can accidentally hurt someone just as badly as you can hurt them on purpose. And when you do, you don't get to decide when they should be done being hurt." "So what? I'm supposed to just stand here and let you attack me?" Colbert asked, his composure finally cracking completely. I apologized. I admitted fault. "I've been nothing but respectful, even as you've spent the last 10 minutes tearing me apart on my own show. At what point does your righteous anger become bullying?" The word hung in the air like a bomb. Bullying. The audience reacted immediately, some booing Colbert for using that term, others applauding him for finally pushing back. DeVito's face went through a series of emotions: surprise, anger, and something that might have been hurt. "Bullying," Danny said quietly. "That's what you think this is? Me holding you accountable for your actions on your own show? That's bullying. But you, throwing my dead mother in my face on national television? That's just an innocent mistake." "That's not what I said," Colbert protested, but DeVito talked right over him. "You know what, Stephen? Let me tell you something about bullying. Bullying is when someone uses their power, their platform, their position to hurt someone who can't fight back. You have the power here. This is your show, your stage, your audience. You control what gets said, what gets aired, what gets cut. I'm just a guest. So don't you dare try to flip this around and make yourself the victim." Colbert's face was bright red now. Whether from embarrassment or anger, it was impossible to tell. "You're not just a guest, Danny. You're Danny DeVito. You're a Hollywood legend with your own platform, your own influence. Don't pretend like you're powerless here. Compared to you, in this moment, I am," DeVito insisted. "You invited me here. You control the narrative. You decide how this gets presented to your audience. And you know what's going to happen? Your editors are going to cut this down, make it look however you want it to look. And tomorrow, your PR team is going to spin it so you come out smelling like roses, while I'm the difficult guest who couldn't take a joke." "Actually," Colbert said, and his tone had changed to something colder, more calculated. "We're live right now. This is all going out exactly as it's happening. There's no editing, no spin, no narrative control. Everyone watching at home is seeing exactly what I'm seeing, which is a guest who came on my show with an axe to grind and has spent the entire interview making me the target." DeVito actually laughed at that, a harsh, bitter sound. "An axe to grind. I came here to talk about a documentary exposing corporate greed and pharmaceutical corruption. I came here to shed light on something important. You're the one who decided to make it personal. You're the one who brought up my mother. Don't you dare try to rewrite what just happened." A producer appeared at the edge of the stage, trying to get Colbert's attention, presumably to suggest they cut to commercial or end the interview, but both men ignored him completely, too locked in their confrontation to care about anything else. "You want to talk about your documentary?" Colbert said, his voice sharp. "Fine, let's talk about it. Your documentary that claims to expose corruption, does it maybe also rely on some questionable sources? Does it maybe present a one-sided narrative? Because from what I understand, several of the experts you interviewed have been discredited in the medical community." DeVito's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Now, you're attacking my work. Now you're questioning my credibility as a filmmaker. This just keeps getting better." "I'm asking legitimate questions," Colbert said, "the same questions any journalist would ask. If you're going to hold me to a standard of perfect accuracy, maybe I should hold your documentary to the same standard. The difference, Stephen, is that my documentary has been fact-checked by 3 different law firms and a team of investigative journalists. Every claim we make is backed up by documentation, by whistleblowers, by internal company memos. We spent 3 years making sure we got it right because we knew people like you would try to discredit it." "People like me," Colbert repeated. "You mean journalists? People who ask questions." "I mean people who are more interested in protecting corporate interests than in exposing the truth," DeVito said, and the audience gasped. There it was, the accusation that had been building throughout the entire confrontation. You know what pharmaceutical companies are, Stephen? They're major advertisers. They buy commercial time on networks, including this one. So forgive me if I'm skeptical about whether you're asking legitimate questions or whether you're just doing damage control for your bosses. That's completely out of line, Colbert said, his voice rising to match DeVito's now. You're suggesting that I'm compromised, that I'm some kind of corporate shill. I've spent my entire career speaking truth to power. Danny, my entire career. And you're going to stand there and question my integrity because I asked you about the credibility of your sources. I'm questioning why you're asking, DeVito shot back. I'm questioning why, in the middle of what you claim is an apology for hurting me, you suddenly pivot to attacking my work. It's a classic deflection tactic. Stephen, change the subject. Put the other person on the defensive. Make them forget what we were originally talking about. We were originally talking about your inability to accept an apology, Colbert said. Your determination to make this into something bigger than it needs to be? I screwed up. I admitted it. I apologized. And instead of accepting that, like an adult, you've turned this into a referendum on my entire career, my ethics, my integrity. That's not fair, Danny. That's not reasonable. DeVito shook his head slowly. You still don't get it. This isn't about fairness or reasonableness. This is about respect. This is about treating people with basic human decency. And when you fail to do that, you don't get to dictate how the person you hurt responds. You don't get to put a time limit on their pain or their anger. So, I'm just supposed to stand here indefinitely? Colbert asked, spreading his arms wide. I'm supposed to let you berate me for as long as you want. At what point does this end, Danny? What's the exit strategy here? The exit strategy, DeVito said deliberately, is you learning something from this. The exit strategy is you actually thinking about what happened here tonight and maybe, just maybe, making some changes to how you do things. But something tells me that's not going to happen. Something tells me that tomorrow you're going to make some self-deprecating jokes about the difficult guest you had. Your audience is going to laugh, and nothing will change. Colbert stared at him for a long moment. You don't know me at all if you think that's what's going to happen. I know what always happens, DeVito replied. I've been in this business for 50 years, Stephen. I've seen it all. The apologies that don't mean anything. The promises to do better that never materialize. The cycle that just keeps repeating. You're not special. Your show isn't special. This moment isn't special. It's just another example of the same old pattern. Then why are you even here? Colbert demanded. If you think so little of me, of my show, of this entire medium, why did you agree to come on? Because I believed in the project, DeVito said simply. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd give it the platform it deserves. Because despite everything, I still had faith that you might actually care about exposing wrongdoing. But clearly I was wrong. That statement seemed to hit Colbert harder than anything else that had been said. His expression shifted from defensive anger to something more complex, wounded pride mixed with genuine hurt. You were wrong about me, he said quietly. That's what you're saying? After everything I've done, after every fight I've taken on, every powerful person I've challenged, you think I don't care about the truth? I think you care about your version of the truth, DeVito replied. I think you care about the truth when it's convenient, when it doesn't threaten your advertisers or your network or your comfortable position at the top of late night. But when it gets messy, when it requires actual sacrifice, I think you do what everyone else does. You protect yourself. The audience was completely silent now. Even the people who had been on Colbert's side seemed affected by the weight of DeVito's words. This had transcended a simple argument. It had become something deeper, a fundamental challenge to everything Colbert had built his career on. You don't know what I've sacrificed, Colbert said, and there was real emotion in his voice now. You don't know the fights I've had with network executives, the pressure I've been under, the compromises I've refused to make. You're making assumptions based on one mistake, one bad moment, and you're using it to tear down everything I've worked for. One bad moment, DeVito repeated. See, that's the thing, Stephen. For you, this is one bad moment. For me, it's my mother. It's 3 years of my life that I poured into a documentary that you just dismissed. It's every time someone in power thinks they can get away with being careless because it's just one bad moment. Those moments add up. They matter. Colbert walked around his desk now, standing face to face with DeVito. No more furniture between them, no more distance, just two men, both angry, both hurt, both convinced they were right. "I never dismissed your documentary," he said. "I asked questions about it. That's what I do. That's my job." "Your job is also to treat your guests with respect," DeVito countered. "Your job is to do basic research before you bring someone on your show. Your job is to be better than the gossip rags and the tabloids and the people who traffic in lies. And tonight, you failed at that job." One of the stage managers was frantically gesturing from off-camera, but neither man paid any attention. The show had gone at least 20 minutes over its scheduled time. Commercial breaks had been missed. The entire production schedule was in chaos. But none of that mattered anymore. This was bigger than television, bigger than scheduling, bigger than any of the normal concerns that govern these shows. "Let me ask you something," Colbert said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "If I'm such a failure, if this show is so meaningless, if I'm just another corporate puppet, then what does that make you? You're standing on my stage, in front of my audience, benefiting from my platform, even as you tear it down. What does that make you, Danny?" "It makes me someone who's still willing to try," DeVito said. "Someone who hasn't given up on the idea that maybe, just maybe, we can actually change things. Someone who's willing to call out hypocrisy, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs me something. Can you say the same?" "I call out hypocrisy every single night," Colbert said loudly. "That's literally what this show is. That's what I built my entire career on. And now you're standing here calling me a hypocrite? The irony is unbelievable." "The irony," DeVito said, stepping closer, "is that you can see it in everyone else but yourself. You can call out politicians for their lies, corporations for their corruption, media figures for their bias, but you can't see your own blind spots. You can't acknowledge your own failures without making excuses, or deflecting, or trying to minimize them." "I acknowledged my failure," Colbert insisted. "Multiple times. I've apologized repeatedly. What more do you want from me? Should I resign? Should I cancel the show? Should I publicly flagellate myself? Tell me what would satisfy you, because clearly nothing I've said so far has been good enough." DeVito was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its fire. It was wearier now, sadder. "I don't want anything from you, Stephen. That's what you're not understanding. This isn't about what you can give me or what you can do to make it better. Some things can't be fixed with apologies or grand gestures. Some things just are what they are." "So this was pointless then," Colbert said. "This whole argument, this whole confrontation, it was all for nothing. We've just spent half an hour destroying each other on live television for no reason." "It wasn't for nothing," DeVito replied. "Maybe someone watching learned something. Maybe someone out there in the audience, in their living room, saw this and realized that they don't have to accept half-hearted apologies, that they don't have to let people off the hook just because it's easier, that they have a right to be angry when someone hurts them, even if it was an accident." "And what about my audience?" Colbert asked. "What about the people who watch this show every night, who trust me, who believe in what we're doing here? What did they learn? That I'm a fraud, that everything we've done means nothing because I made one mistake. They learned that you're human," DeVito said. "They learned that even people they admire can screw up. And maybe, if we're lucky, they learned that it's okay to hold people accountable even when you respect them, especially when you respect them." A woman from the audience suddenly stood up. She was older, probably in her 60s, and her voice carried across the studio. "I lost my mother last year," she said. "Cancer, just like yours, Mr. DeVito, and I was with her every day too. And when this show made that joke, when Stephen read that card, it hurt me too. Because it made light of something that isn't light, something that's sacred. The cameras swung to her, and you could see she was crying. But she kept talking. But I also know Stephen. I've watched him for years. And I don't think he's a bad person. I think he made a mistake. And I think maybe," she looked at DeVito now, "maybe we can acknowledge that someone can hurt us and still deserve forgiveness." DeVito's face softened slightly as he looked at her. "I appreciate you sharing that. I really do, and I'm sorry for your loss. But forgiveness isn't something that can be demanded or scheduled. It comes when it comes, if it comes at all. And right now, in this moment, I'm just not there yet." The woman nodded and sat back down. Several other audience members were wiping their eyes now. The entire atmosphere in the studio had shifted again, from confrontational to something more raw, more vulnerable. Colbert turned back to DeVito. "I don't know how to end this," he admitted. "I don't know what to say that I haven't already said. I don't know how to make this right." "Maybe you can't," DeVito said. "Maybe that's something you have to accept. That not everything can be fixed. Not everything can be smoothed over. Maybe the best thing you can do is sit with this feeling, this discomfort, and let it change you. Let it make you more careful, more thoughtful, more human." For a long moment, neither man spoke. They just stood there, exhausted, emotionally drained. Two performers who had given their audiences more than anyone had bargained for. Then Colbert did something unexpected. He extended his hand. Not in a gesture of peace or reconciliation necessarily, but in acknowledgement. An acknowledgement that something real had happened here, something that mattered, regardless of how uncomfortable it had been. DeVito looked at the hand for several seconds. The entire studio held its breath. Then, slowly, he reached out and shook it. It wasn't warm. It wasn't friendly. But it was honest. "I'm going to leave now," DeVito said. "Not because you're kicking me off, but because I've said what I needed to say. And because I think we both need some time to process what just happened here." Colbert nodded. "For what it's worth, Danny, I am truly sorry. I know you don't believe me, but it's true." "I believe that you believe it," DeVito said. "And maybe that's enough for now." He turned and walked off the stage. No dramatic exit, no final zinger, no attempt to get the last word. He just left, and the audience watched him go in complete silence. Colbert stood alone on his stage, visibly shaken. He looked at the cameras, at his audience, at his band, and you could see him struggling to find words. Finally, he spoke. "Well," he said, his voice rough, "that was real. That was probably more real than anything we've ever done on this show. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's what happened. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, honestly, I have no idea what we're going to do." He walked off the stage too, leaving everyone, the live audience, the crew, the millions watching at home, sitting with the weight of what they'd just witnessed. The cameras cut to the band, who looked as stunned as everyone else. Jon Batiste started playing something soft, something contemplative, as the show finally, mercifully, went to commercial. But the real story wasn't over. Because in those 15 minutes of commercial break, social media exploded. People took sides, argued, debated, analyzed every word that had been said. So what do you think? Who handled this situation better, DeVito or Colbert? Was Danny right to push so hard, or did he take it too far? Did Stephen's apologies ring true, or were they just damage control? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button.